Welcome back to The Deep Dive. And today we're going to, it's a topic that I'm sure resonates with a lot of our listeners, those of you who sent in those resources. And we're diving into the idea of actually making real, significant life changes in a very focused 90-day period. Yeah, a 90-day sprint. So we're really looking at those personal stories, the ones that, you all sent in that are just packed with steps and action plans, all kind of pointing to the same thing, that this transformation, a real transformation, is possible in about 3 months. I mean, that's pretty exciting to think about, right?
Definitely.
Not just kind of daydreaming about a better version of ourselves, but actually actively building that version.
Right.
And in a relatively short amount of time. And we have these guides, people who've actually done it, right? Who've kind of walked this path. So today, our deep dive it's very specific, it's very focused. We're pulling out the core principles, the actionable strategies that you can use to make real changes you can actually see in 90 days. Straight from the experiences in these resources you sent in. Have you ever felt that? I think we all have, that kind of tug. Like you want something to be different.
Yeah.
Like you want to be healthier, you want to have better relationships, a better career, something more fulfilling.
Sure.
But then how do you do it? It's like this massive, insurmountable wall. And these resources, they don't go around the wall. They don't climb the wall. They jump right over it.
Right over it, yeah.
They give you those practical step-by-step, here's how to do it guides. So what's really fascinating right off the bat is that we see this 90-day structure again and again in these stories. And it's not just, some arbitrary time frame they've all picked. These resources, they really stress that there's something kind of magical about those 90 days.
Yeah.
It really is that sweet spot, the perfect length of time for actual, genuine, lasting transformation to happen. Think about it, right? It's long enough for real habits to take root.
Mm-hmm.
They can even become almost automatic.
Yeah. Second nature.
But it's also short enough to keep us engaged.
Yeah, absolutely.
To keep that motivation going.
Yeah.
That feeling that, I gotta do this. So it's not just, I should try this 90-day thing.
Right.
It's a tool, a really powerful tool to make change happen.
Right. It gives you those boundaries, creates that tension.
Exactly. This really interesting tension between possibility, what you can achieve, and urgency. I've got to do it now. And that combination, it seems like, is really powerful for making a real shift. And it's not just, anecdotal, right? Because there's also some pretty compelling research sprinkled throughout these accounts. We see mentions of, it takes about 21 days for a habit to start to form.
That's the classic number, right?
Yeah, but then they go further. They dig deeper and say, well, it's actually closer to 66 days for it to really become ingrained.
To become automatic.
Yeah, automatic. It clicks into place. It's not just something you're trying to do. It's who you are.
Yeah.
So that 90-day window, they're saying, isn't just random.
Yeah.
There's a real reason behind it. It gives your brain, your body, enough time to actually build those habits.
To make them stick.
And, it's not just dipping your toes in the water. It's like learning to swim.
I like that. That's a good analogy.
Right. You're actually in it. You're doing it. You're changing. And there's another pretty interesting aspect to this, which is that built-in deadline, right? That 90 days, it's an end point.
Yeah, there's an end in sight.
And, if we're honest with ourselves, we're all pretty good at putting things off, right? Procrastination, it's a human thing.
Oh, absolutely.
But, there's something about a consequence. Even when it's a consequence we set for ourselves, like, I didn't hit my 90-day goal, that can be really motivating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It kicks us into gear.
One of the sources even phrased it like this. They said, we might be masters of procrastination, but we're even better at avoiding things we really don't want to happen.
I like that.
Right. And that clock, that ticking clock of the 90-day mark, that can be what we need to actually get us moving.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, okay, we've got this time frame, this window of opportunity. But then, the big question, where do you even start?
Right.
If you want to make a real change, these big changes, well, the sources are all pretty much in agreement here. Yeah. It all starts with really, really taking a good look at where you stand right now. Mm-hmm. A true, honest self-assessment.
Right.
And they use different terms for it. Some call it a life audit.
Yeah.
Some talk about using a tool called the Wheel of Life. But the idea is the same.
Yeah, absolutely. It's taking stock.
And that raises a question, right? How often do we actually do that? Really step back and take a good, hard look at where we are in all the different parts of our lives.
Yeah. It's easy to just keep going, keep moving.
Right. Exactly. And we're talking about, physical health, How are your relationships, your career, your money situation, your mental health, your emotional well-being? How are you growing as a person? Are you having fun? Are you getting enough recreation? And these aren't just separate little boxes, right?
No, definitely not. They all bleed into each other.
They're all connected, feeding into each other.
Yeah, big time.
And this isn't just, oh, think about these things for a minute. It's about actually writing it down and then comparing where you are, your current reality, with where you really want to be.
The ideal version.
The ideal version.
Right.
And one of the sources gives this great example about physical health. It's this contrast, right, between always feeling tired, like you never have enough energy. Battling cravings. Maybe you've got this like specific body fat percentage goal in your head and you're just not there. And then comparing that with how you want to feel, full of energy, really nourishing your body with good food, feeling comfortable and confident in your own skin.
Right.
And that comparison, that gap, it shows you what you're really aiming for.
Yeah, that's the point, right?
Yeah.
To see that gap clearly.
What's so powerful about that self-assessment is it makes you think about it deliberately.
Yeah, it makes it real.
It's not just, oh, I want things to be different. It's, okay, what exactly do I want to move away from and what do I want to move towards? It takes you from this general kind of vague unhappiness to, okay, here's what I actually want.
Concrete goals. I love it.
So while you're listening to this, take a second, think about it. In your own life, where's that gap the biggest? Where do you feel that urge to change the most? Okay, so you've done your life audit, you've looked at those different areas, you see where you want to improve, and this next step, this is where a lot of people, they get excited, they jump in, they want to do everything.
Oh, yeah, I've been there.
And it's usually where things fall apart. You
Yeah.
get overwhelmed and you give up. So the sources are really clear on this. You can't change everything at once. You have to choose.
Prioritize.
Exactly, prioritize. You got to pick the 2, maybe 3 things that are going to have the biggest impact, that will make the most difference, what they call the high value changes.
The ones that really move the needle.
Right, and this is where you have to be strategic, because it's not always about what's easiest or
Right.
what feels good right away. These high value changes, these are the things that will unlock progress in all those other areas.
The ripple effect.
Even if, at first, they seem harder or maybe not as exciting. Like, there's this example that comes up a lot in the resources about focusing on getting physically fit. And it makes sense, right? If you're healthier, you have more energy,
Oh, yeah.
which means you can focus better at work.
Absolutely.
You can be more present in your relationships. You just generally feel better. It has this like multiplier effect.
Yeah, like you said, it unlocks things.
So it's like you're making this one big change, but then other areas start to naturally improve alongside it. So think about your own life. What are those key areas? If you could really focus on just 1 or 2 for these 90 days, which ones, if you really improve them, would create the most change, the most positive change in everything else?
Okay, so now we're talking about actually making these changes. And let's be real, when we decide to change, we usually get this initial burst of energy, right?
Yeah, the motivation is high.
It feels great, but those sources are really clear about one thing. You can't rely on motivation alone. It comes and goes, it's fickle. What really matters is consistency, doing the work day after day, even when you don't feel like it.
Even when it's not fun.
And a lot of the resources talk about this framework called the 12-week year, which basically means you break down your year into these shorter periods of really intense focus.
Like sprints. Yeah, like sprints. And the big idea behind it is that it's those consistent actions, those little things you do day after day, week after week, that actually make the difference. It's not about waiting for inspiration to strike or trying to do everything at once. It's about those small, steady steps forward.
Yeah, it's a compound effect, like building a muscle one rep at a
Well,
time.
one of the personal stories that you all sent in really brings this to life.
Mm-hmm.
This person wanted to change their mindset in 30 days to go from like constant self-doubt to a more solid sense of self-belief.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah, it is. And what they did was commit to making one independent decision every week. Doesn't have to be huge, just a decision they made for themselves. And it's such a good illustration, right? Because it takes this big, abstract goal and breaks it down into something concrete, something you can actually do and track and keep doing. And what's so refreshing about these stories is that they're honest, they're real. They talk about that inner resistance, that little voice of doubt we all have that pops up right when you're trying to change.
Oh, I know that voice.
Yeah, we all do. And they say it's not about making that voice disappear. It's about knowing it's there, but choosing to do the work anyway. It's about doing those new behaviors even when that voice is loud, because that's how you build the habit.
And how you build that new you.
Which brings us to a really important part of this whole transformation thing, a part that people often miss. It's not just about adding new habits. It's about letting go of old ones and even letting go of parts of that old you that don't fit with the person you want to be.
That no longer serve you.
Exactly. And, this can be tough because those old habits, that old self, they were there for a reason, right? Maybe they helped you at some point. Maybe they were comfortable, familiar.
Yeah, it can be hard to let go.
But the sources get really specific here. They say, okay, make a conscious decision to cut back on those things that are holding you back. Like maybe you're drinking too much.
Or binge watching TV every night.
Yeah, stuff that's eating up your time and energy. Time and energy you could be using for those changes you've prioritized.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's about reallocating your resources.
And the real insight here is that our habits, they're not random.
No,
they're part of who we are. They're part of our identity.
Right.
So if you really want to make those big 90-day transformations, you have to actually start being that person, the person who already has those new habits. It's not just wishing for it. It's actually becoming it.
You embody it. You become the new you.
Okay, so we've covered a lot in this deep dive. Let's do a quick recap of those core principles that we've seen again and again in your sources. First, the power of that 90-day time frame, focusing your energy and attention for that specific period.
Makes it manageable.
Second, doing that life audit, really being honest with yourself about where you are and where you want to be.
Knowing yourself.
Third, choosing carefully, prioritizing those 2 or 3 changes that'll have the biggest impact.
High value changes.
And fourth, consistency over motivation.
Day in, day out.
Day in, day out. Action, not just wishing. And fifth, shedding those old habits, those old ways of being, embracing that new identity. And the message from all these sources, it's loud and clear. Start now.
Don't wait.
Don't wait for the perfect moment because it's not coming. Monday's not going to magically make it easier. The first of the month isn't going to give you superpowers. New Year's resolutions, we all know how those go.
Yeah, exactly.
The time is now, today. So we're going to give you 4 steps, 4 things you can do right now based on everything we've learned from these amazing sources. Step 1, commit to that life audit. Do it. Write it down. Where are you now in those key areas of your life? Where do you want to be? Step 2, once you've got that audit, choose your focus. Pick 2, maybe 3 areas, the ones that if you made progress there would make the biggest difference everywhere else. Step 3, make a plan. Break down those big goals into monthly steps, weekly steps, even daily steps. What are the small, consistent things you can do every day to move you forward? And finally, step 4, what needs to go? What habits, what patterns are holding you back? And what are you going to start doing instead, things that will support the new you? As we wrap up this deep dive, it's worth repeating this promise that shines through in all of your sources. Real change, big change, the kind of change that can shift your whole life.
And it's possible.
It is possible in 90 days. So take that first step. It could be as simple as grabbing a notebook, writing down those areas you want to focus on, or just picking one habit you want to work on.
Just start.
We're really looking forward to hearing about your progress, about that 2.0 version of you that's waiting to emerge.
Yeah, we can't wait to see what you accomplish.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.